I'll never forget the night my daughters sat across from me at the dinner table, their little hands clenched together, their eyes darting between me and the woman I was dating. Then one of them whispered, almost trembling, "Dad, it's not fair to Mom. Why can't you just give her another chance?" That sentence hit me harder than any punch I've ever taken. Imagine your own kids, the people you'd walk through fire for, suddenly becoming the messengers of someone else's desperate fantasy. It wasn't just awkward, it was heartbreaking. I could feel the weight of their mother's manipulation behind those words, almost like she was sitting at the table with us, pulling invisible strings. And here's the kicker. It wasn't the first time. For years I had brushed off little hints, ignored subtle comments, and endured awkward silences, thinking maybe my daughters would grow out of this idea of Mom and Dad back together again. But this was different. This was direct. They weren't asking. They were pleading. I stared at them, trying to steady my voice, fighting the mix of anger and sorrow boiling inside me. How could I explain to them that what they thought was love between their parents had actually been shattered years ago? Shattered by betrayal, lies, and choices they were too young to understand. That moment, right there at the dinner table, was when I realized I couldn't keep pretending this storm would pass on its own. My ex-wife had finally crossed a line, and whether my daughters liked it or not, I was going to have to reveal some truths they weren't ready to hear. When I look back, it almost feels like another lifetime. I was 20 when I married my ex-wife. We weren't rich, we weren't particularly wise, but we were young and in love, or at least I thought we were. Within the very first year, our 2 daughters were born. I remember holding those tiny bundles in my arms, terrified I'd break them if I even breathed too hard. And despite the chaos of sleepless nights, diaper explosions, and doctor visits, I was happy. For me, that was everything. Family, stability, purpose. Now, marriage isn't all sunshine and fairy tales, but I genuinely believed we were building something solid. I worked hard, came home exhausted, yet somehow, her smile, back then, made it all feel worth it. The house smelled of baby lotion and spilled formula, and even though the walls echoed with crying more than laughter, I thought, this is it. This is my life, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. But cracks began to show in places I didn't want to admit. Little things at first. Missed kisses at the door, conversations that felt like transactions rather than genuine connection, her pulling away from intimacy. I chalked it up to stress, to parenting, to the kind of rough patches people always warn you about. But deep down, a quiet unease began gnawing at me. And then came the betrayal. I won't sugarcoat it. It broke me. The woman I had sworn to protect and cherish had chosen someone else behind my back. And it wasn't just one slip-up or a drunken mistake at some office party. It was an affair, consistent, deliberate, hidden in the shadows while I was at home reading bedtime stories to our girls. To this day, I can still feel that cold knife twist when the truth finally landed. The divorce was inevitable. I had zero tolerance for cheating. Love doesn't survive dishonesty, not the kind of love I believed in. Walking away was painful, but dragging out a hollow marriage would have been worse for me and for the girls. I tried to move on. Counseling, long talks with friends, late-night drives just to clear my head. It wasn't pretty, but I survived. And eventually, I found myself in a place where I didn't hate her. I didn't even care what she did anymore, so long as it didn't involve our daughters. That was the one line I would never compromise on. But here's the thing. While I moved on, she never did. And not only her family, and even, heartbreakingly, my daughters, kept holding on to this fantasy version of our family, the one where Mom and Dad are back together, smiling in family portraits like nothing had ever gone wrong. And my ex? She knew exactly how to fuel that fantasy. At first it was subtle. So subtle I almost convinced myself it was harmless. My daughters would come back from weekends with their mom and casually drop lines like, "Dad, Mom said you two used to be so perfect together," or "She never stopped loving you, you know." I'd laugh it off, ruffle their hair, and change the subject. Kids say things, right? But deep down, I knew those words weren't theirs. They were echoes. Echoes of a woman who couldn't let go. Over the years, the hints piled up. Every birthday party, every school recital, my ex would show up dressed to the nines, all smiles, as if we were still some happily married couple. She'd position herself in family photos, sometimes sliding in so close you'd think we were still husband and wife. And while I stayed cordial for the sake of the girls, I could feel her agenda bleeding through every interaction. Then the comments from the girls grew bolder. They'd show me pictures of her, carefully chosen ones where she looked her best, as if to remind me of what I was missing. Sometimes they'd say things like, "See how happy she looks when she's with us? Imagine if you were there too, Dad." And every time, I'd sit them down, gently explain that their mother and I weren't ever getting back together. But my words never seemed to stick. When I finally started dating again, the tension escalated. At first, the girls stayed quiet, maybe unsure how to react. But once they realized my relationship with Clemens was serious, the storm rolled in. I'll never forget the way one of them stomped into the living room one afternoon. Her little face twisted in anger and snapped, "Why is she here? This isn't fair to Mom." That cut deep. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about them being used as pawns in a game I wanted no part of. I could almost see their mother's fingerprints all over those words. And the more serious Clemens and I became, the more desperate the tactics got. I had conversations with my ex, calm at first, then firm, then flat-out confrontational. I told her to stop feeding them these ideas, to let our daughters grow up without carrying her baggage. She'd smile, nod, act as if she understood, and then the cycle would start all over again. Meanwhile, Clemens, God bless her, handled it with grace. She told me, "Give them time, they'll come around." But I wasn't so sure. Time had passed, plenty of it, and still the shadow of my ex loomed over everything. I began to wonder, if my daughters couldn't separate their mother's dreams from my reality, how long before they started resenting me for not playing along? And that's when things reached the breaking point, the dinner table plea that forced me to face what I had been avoiding. That dinner table moment changed everything. I sat there, fork halfway to my mouth, staring at my daughters as they begged me to give Mom another chance. My chest tightened, not just from anger but from grief. Grief that they had been dragged into a fantasy they didn't ask for. I put the fork down, leaned back, and for a few seconds I couldn't even speak. The silence was heavy, broken only by the clinking of their nervous fingers against their plates. I wanted to scream. I wanted to storm into my ex's house and shout, "How dare you use them like this?" But instead, I swallowed that rage and focused on the two innocent faces in front of me. I said as gently as I could, "Girls, your mom and I are never getting back together. That's not how love works. When someone breaks trust the way she did, there's no going back." Their eyes widened. One of them whispered, "But Mom said," and then stopped, as if realizing she had revealed too much. That was the knife twist I had dreaded. My ex wasn't just hinting, she was outright coaching them. After dinner, I called my ex, and I didn't bother with pleasantries. My voice was low, sharp, the kind of tone that leaves no room for negotiation. "This ends now," I told her. "You don't get to rewrite history through our daughters. You don't get to poison them against me because you can't move on. If you can't respect that, then we'll take this to court." Of course, she played innocent. "Oh, you're overreacting. They just want a happy family, you know how kids are." But I wasn't buying it anymore. Kids don't rehearse speeches about fairness. Kids don't cry at the dinner table begging their father to take back the woman who betrayed him, unless someone planted those seeds. That was the night I made a decision. No more silence. No more shielding the girls from the truth under the illusion of protecting their innocence. They deserved honesty, even if it stung. And if my ex thought she could weaponize them against me, she was about to find out I wasn't going to play nice anymore. The next weekend, I sat my daughters down in the living room. No TV on, no distractions. Just the three of us and the weight of a conversation I had avoided for far too long. My palms were sweating, because how do you tell your kids something that will shatter the image they've been clinging to? But I knew silence was worse than truth. I started slow. "Girls, I need to tell you why your mom and I aren't together anymore. Not the sugar-coated version, the real one." Their eyes darted between me, cautious, bracing, and then I said it. She cheated on me. She broke the trust that holds a marriage together. The silence that followed was deafening. One of them looked like I had just knocked the wind out of her. The other crossed her arms and shook her head, whispering, "That's not what Mom said." My heart ached, but I held my ground. "I know it's hard to hear, but I won't lie to you. That's what happened, and that's why we can't go back." For days, they were cold with me. Short answers, no hugs, just distance. I'd catch them whispering to each other, probably wondering who to believe. It was brutal, feeling like I was losing them not because of what I had done, but because of someone else's narrative. That's when Clemens stepped in. She never forced herself into the conversation, never tried to replace their mother. But she showed them kindness in ways that were impossible to ignore, packing extra snacks when they went to school, listening to their endless stories about friends and homework, sitting with them during movies, laughing at the same silly jokes. She wasn't trying to compete, she was just being real, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, I saw the walls around my daughters start to crack. One evening, my youngest hugged me out of the blue. She buried her face in my chest and whispered, "I just don't want to lose you, Dad." And in that moment, I realized honesty might hurt in the short term, but it plants seeds of trust that grow stronger with time. It wasn't smooth sailing, far from it. But for the first time in years, I felt like we were moving forward instead of circling around the same toxic loop. And little did I know the real turning point was still to come, when the truth about my ex finally caught up with her. The unraveling started small, almost like a crack in glass. One evening, my oldest came home unusually quiet. She finally admitted that she'd asked her mom why they weren't a family anymore, and my ex spun the same story she'd been feeding them for years, that I had given up too soon, that she had always loved me. But this time, my daughter pushed back. "Dad said you cheated," she told her. That single sentence was the spark that lit the fire. Instead of denying it outright, my ex fumbled. She stammered, tried to change the subject, then snapped, "Well, adults make mistakes you wouldn't understand." That was all it took. Kids might be young, but they know when someone's dodging the truth. The girls started comparing stories, mine and hers, and the pieces didn't add up. They noticed the inconsistencies, the half-truths, the way she twisted events to paint herself as the victim. And slowly, the tide shifted. One day, my youngest asked me, with tears in her eyes, "Why didn't Mom just tell us the truth?" That broke me and healed me at the same time. It broke me because I saw the disappointment in her eyes, not toward me, but toward her mother. And it healed me because, for the first time, they were seeing the manipulation for what it was. The final blow came during a school event. Clemens was with me, cheering for the girls, while my ex sat a few rows back. When the girls spotted us afterward, they ran straight into my arms and then tugged Clemens along for pictures. My ex's face tightened, her smile brittle, but she couldn't hide the fact that she was no longer the center of the story. Word spread within the extended family, too. Her sisters, who had always been skeptical of her perfect victim act, finally connected the dots. They started calling her out, not me. And the irony? The more she tried to defend herself, the more obvious her lies became. Watching her lose her grip wasn't something I celebrated out loud, but inside, it felt like poetic justice. Not because I wanted to see her hurt, but because truth has a funny way of rising to the surface, no matter how deeply someone tries to bury it. And in that moment, I realized the battle wasn't just about clearing my name. It was about giving my daughters the clarity they deserved. And with the truth out in the open, I finally had room to focus on something far more important. Building a future that wasn't haunted by the past. Looking back now, it's almost surreal how far we've come. There was a time when I thought my daughters might never see me for who I truly was. A father who never gave up on them, even when their mother tried to twist the story. But slowly, piece by piece, trust rebuilt itself. These days, our weekends feel different, lighter. The girls don't tiptoe around conversations anymore. We laugh. We argue about silly things like pizza toppings, and sometimes they even tease me about how much Clemens has improved my fashion sense. There's no invisible elephant in the room weighing us down. Just us, raw, imperfect, and honest. Clemens has become a quiet anchor in all this. She never once demanded recognition, but the girls give it to her anyway. They'll text her about homework, send her memes, even ask her to come to school events. She's not trying to replace their mom. She's simply showing them what healthy love looks like. And honestly, that's more valuable than anything I could have planned. As for my ex, well, let's just say the pedestal she once stood on has crumbled. She's still their mother, and I'll never deny them that bond. But she no longer gets to control the narrative. The girls know who she is now, flaws and all. And funny enough, I think that's been freeing for them too. They don't have to live in confusion anymore. If there's one thing I've learned through all this, It's that silence protects no one. I thought I was shielding my daughters by hiding the truth, but in reality, I was only giving space for lies to grow. Honesty hurt, but it also healed. And to anyone out there stuck in a similar storm, let me say this. You can't control the way others twist your story, but you can control how you live your truth. And when you do, time has a way of revealing everything that was hidden in the dark. For me, the chapter with my ex is closed, but the story with my daughters, that's still being written, one honest day at a time, and that's a story I'll never stop fighting for.